So, yeah, for my reference, I go typically pretty berserk. And I don't just grab, I tend to not grab the first like page or first half page of results on Google. Google's also gotten really terrible at image search lately, I've noticed. It's like really short sometimes, or the results are just all like copyrighted images that you have to pay for, blah, blah, blah. So it's kind of a pain in the butt these days, but you can try Pinterest as well. Pinterest isn't bad. Um, but so for me, this being kind of a post apocalyptic type scenario, um, I had found a bunch of really interesting images and like industrial decay as well was another search term. So sometimes like stumbling upon the right search terms or the right words or keywords is very, very useful. So yeah, the setting for my character was, kind of like, yeah, basically living in a war zone, sort of being forced to live in a sort of old office and it's adjacent to an old factory. And so when the character's awoken, startled awake by something, it's she's going to be in this kind of office type environment, and then there'll be some booby traps and things of that nature. So yeah, really cool, kind of seeing like cabling and old wiring, broken devices, old machinery, abandoned places, how paint peels. Right. Sometimes you just get the strangest collection of objects in rooms like this too. So, and I try to always go with real photography. I don't typically like to use previous concept art stuff from games, even if it's something that's inspired by a game, a film, a TV show, or maybe even a comic. Yes, I might use one or two images, but then I'll decide to search for things adjacent to that in traditional painting or traditional sculpture and photography. Also, what's kind of fun too is like you'll pick up something like this that is like you would not necessarily think of to just have on a wall somewhere. Dirty oil, clean oil, smoking, no smoking. Right? It's kind of funny to see some of these things in reality. Um, So that's kind of one set, and I sort of divided it up. Yeah, I've set my film as well, sort of in the CN Tower area. So the stream of water is actually going to be pouring down a collapsed version of the CN Tower. um, so again, there's some really crazy shots of the interior, exterior of what is in there. So I tried. There's not a ton of stuff actually about how it's built or what its structure is. So good to try to go as deep as you can, I find, on research. And then adjacent to this, next to this, is it's an old train station called the Roundhouse, and it's been turned into sort of a quasi museum slash brewery. So that's where I think it would kind of be interesting to have like a little office area where this character is living, and then for them to move into maybe areas where there's again old industrial components maybe left behind. Um, so again, old school images there. And then I've taken my reference and brought it into my pre-production folder. So just show that if I can. Oh no, did I lose my images? That's a bit of a bummer. Let's see. Let me just see if I still have them somewhere. May have been too hasty in moving some things around. Okay, let me go back to sec. Yeah, it's not in there. I'll have to see if I can find it again. But may have made a mistake too. I don't know if I backed up that set of references, but we'll check it out. I'll just take a quick look here. Yeah, so I had sort of a really interesting image, let's say industrial, decay, stairwell. So yeah, the idea was like in the sort of following sequence past the opening. Yeah, I have a few of these. These are some of the shots that are actually in my references. The character's kind of like in an upper floor and is sort of looking down, or hears a noise down below. So there's sort of this setup where there's almost like an upper floor sort of stairwell. Yeah, it's too bad. I wish I could find the exact images again, but. Yeah, so again, some really kind of haunting and spooky images of these sort of stairwells and how they appear. And a lot of times they're very, very wide. They can be like 4 to 6 feet wide, sometimes even wider. So I like to look at and think about the real world scale. And this will be an interior. So you can choose to do an interior, exterior, and it's ideal for this project if you keep it very small in scope. So yeah, there's this kind of idea that there's almost like an upper office area, and then there's this sort of very large industrial sized stairs that are quite wide, leading down into an unknown spot. So yeah, I'll just skim through my images again here and see if I can find something else. Oh yeah, and this was very, very rough, sort of starting to set up the exterior as well. So I often, when I do blocking, it's super quick, like very minimal to low res mesh. Oh, maybe, do I have it in here? No. Okay. All right, back to my reference for a second. Oh, here we go. I just put it in a different folder. My God. Okay, so here's my 2 reference images, right? Very spooky, unsettling. And sometimes too, when I see something like, there's images of like a piano that's like broken down, but still in okay shape, or it's like fallen down some stairs. Sometimes those objects really are inspiring, or those little sort of scenes, right? So these 2 images really spoke out to me for sort of this scenario of someone who's protecting themselves by being upstairs, kind of sleeping in a corner. It's a vulnerable younger kid, so they have to protect themselves. And then we hear this kind of creature rustling downstairs. So we don't quite know what's there. And I love this shot in particular. I don't know if it's easy to see or not. It's quite dark, but yeah, I wonder if I can just edit it for a second. Edits. Tools. Color. Yeah, I guess I'll do that. Go with highlights, shadow. There, just to like really see it. Right, this sort of scene, the scenario. So I like that there's like this railing here, meaning that this was more of an open space, and this was like a quick storage area or even a tiny weird office. And again, it's like another spot where you don't know that something could emerge from. So it's an awkward layout. It's also a bit of a both visible and hidden. And then of course we got this downstairs area. Now this is almost going to probably certainly turn and go down and turn and turn. But for me, I kind of want it to be sort of like when this creature thing that I have emerges, I want it to just be visible down here, maybe just in silhouette. So my alteration will be making the stairwell go down further. So we'll talk a little bit about just setup and that sort of thing in a minute. There we go. Okay, so I really like those 2 images, and yeah, as I was saying, if we're kind of looking at urban decay and whatnot, it's right. Like I said, this is it's unsettling when you see a very familiar object and then it's just completely like burnt out, flipped over. This is another example. And like I said, I really like to go kind of wide and deep and get as much images as I can, and then start to kind of pull things that are inspirational. So I think I have something like 933 reference images in one folder. It's a little insane, but and this one, it's not so much on here. Like for specific things, it's 20, 30, depending on. But it's good, I find, to kind of really dig deep and get some sense of what are the things that sort of speak to you, right? So originally I had been inspired by, I mean, maybe inspired is not the right word, but moved by, issues in the Middle East. And so I was thinking of setting it there, but then I thought, well, I don't live there. I can't really speak to the stories from there. So I would set it in Canada at least. And, so I think context too matters. But, having a kid be orphaned by war, and the idea or the sort of backdrop of this story is that, that's one aspect, but during this kind of conflict, this kid growing up in a conflict zone, there's these creatures that start emerging out of that. Monsters too, for me, I love monsters and creatures, and monsters are often symbolic of like real horrors, real things, right? Like Godzilla is very much like a parable about, nuclear energy and nuclear weapons, right? So he emerges because of radiation that affected normal animals and kind of created or awoken an ancient, creature, depending on which sort of story you see. Um, right? Zombies are like, oftentimes imply that there's a military thing that's gone wrong, or there's environmental pollution that's created living dead folks that have risen from the grave, right? So there's all these oftentimes like thematic and moral aspects to these stories. So I often like to really think about that constantly. So even if I'm modeling something for another project, I still like to think in those terms.